Hey everybody, today I have another 2 container recipes that I want to plant up, and this time I went about it a little bit differently. In the past I went hunting for recipes and then figured out my plants. This time I had 2 plants that I really wanted to work with because they're 2 of my favorites and I needed some inspiration on maybe a different way that I could plant them up than I have in the past. And those plants, the first one is this one here. This is called Beth's Blue Isotoma, and it's just starting to flower. There's lots of buds on this one right now, but this plant is so underrated and underappreciated. Nobody seems to think about it at all. I don't hear anybody talk about it, but it is fantastic. I think it's also called starflower, and it's one of those, you just plant it and forget it. It just needs its sun, its water, and it's fertilizer every once in a while. You don't do any trimming, zero deadheading, nothing. I absolutely love this one. I've never regretted putting it into any container at all. It kind of has a little bit of a flavor of maybe a lobelia, but it definitely has its own kind of fluffy, bushy, feathery kind of character to it. It's really a fantastic one. So to figure out what I could put it with, I did go onto the Proven Winners website because they have recipes for a lot of their plants, and this is a Proven Winners variety. I have seen some other isotomas out there, but they're not very plentiful. You don't find them in too many places. So I found that they only had 2 recipes, but I liked the one recipe a lot. So I'm going to share that one with you. So it starts with a Beth's Blue, and you basically put the Beth's Blue in the center, and this one, I think it's, what is it, 12 to 14 inches or something like that. And then they put it with the lemon slice, the Superbell's lemon slice Calibrachoa, and there is something, there's like wizardry in this plant, because not only does it get tons of flowers, it gets really quite large, and then every single flower seems to be perfect every time. Like a lot of times when you have variegated or striped plants, sometimes you get, ones that are just kind of crazy and they don't look like they're supposed to. This one is so consistent. It's unbelievable. So how Proven Winners managed to get this one, and there's not other colors of this. There's not other Calibrachoas that are really similar to this. It's just this one standalone that's absolutely fantastic. I do love it, but we're almost out of it. So I was looking for some substitutions for this. So I love the idea of having the yellow. So I could go with another yellow Calibrachoa, and I have the Cha-Cha here, which gets a similar size. I noticed this one is a little bit more, has a little bit more arms, whereas the Cha-Cha I've noticed is more of kind of a pillow. It's a tidier habit, but they get similar in size, and both of them do kind of mound and trail, so this would be a good option. But I also was considering putting in this new Petcoa, which is a hybrid of a Calibrachoa and a petunia. It's called Caliburst Yellow, and has these beautiful yellow flowers. So they're a little bit smaller flowers than a petunia, but they're a little bit bigger flowers than a Calibrachoa. You don't get the sticky leaves of the petunia, and they're just really easy to grow. They're really weather tolerant. So this was tempting me as well. So I was kind of like, oh, I could go with either one. But I thought, well, before I decide on this, I need to decide what I'm doing here, because they have the Supertunia Mini Vista Violet Star. And this is a beautiful petunia. However, I didn't really necessarily love it with the Beth's Blue. I think it looks nice with the Beth's Blue, but I thought, if I were to put one of these kind in, I probably would have went with the Pink Star. I think the pink with that yellow and this blue would be really beautiful. So I kind of talked myself out of using the Violet Star. And when I started thinking about the Pink Star, I thought, I think I do want to go with a pink. So I have a couple of options here. One that I'm really seriously considering is the Itsy Pink, which is new this year, and we just trimmed a lot of these. So I don't have that one blooming, but I did grab this one because, right here. Because there are some blooming in this combo, and it's a beautiful pink color, and this is mixed in with the Itsy White and the Itsy Magenta, but it's a really nice petunia. Has those little tiny flowers, smaller than most of the Calibrachoas. It's a blanket type petunia, so it is very dense with flowers and with its leaves, and it just kind of cascades down. It will cover this pot very easily. Probably by the end of the month, we're probably not going to see any more of this pot. That's how vigorous this one can be. So you have to be a little careful because not a lot of stuff comes through it, but I thought that would be beautiful in here with one of these yellows. But I also was considering, there's another Calibrachoa called Cabaret Strawberry Parfait, and I love this one. And again, I only have it in this combo, but I'll show you. The color on this is so beautiful, and it really caught my attention in the trial gardens as well. And so I'm just doing that whole debate, like, oh, do I want to go with this one or more of that solid pink? And the more I've been thinking about it, so I keep looking at it, like I put them next to each other here, and I keep doing that type of thing. I think in the end, I'm going to go with the Itsy I hope I don't regret it. And I also feel like putting the petunia and the calibrachoa and that, I have 3 different varieties. Maybe I'll, it'll make me a little luckier, because sometimes with calibrachoas, although I've gotten a lot better with them, they end up petering out a little bit on me. So I'm, always a little careful about it, but I have learned I just got to keep them watered appropriately, kind of let them dry out a little bit. Don't keep them very wet, and just give them regular fertilizer. And they lasted all season for me last year, which was the first year I had all my calibrachoas last all season. So that's a good thing. So then that brings me back to, if I'm gonna go with this Itsy, do I go with this little bit bigger Petcoa, or do I go with this calibrachoa? And oh, it's a really tough call. I kind of feel like this would bring, you know what, I think it's a horse apiece, really, like whichever one I decide. I think I like the solid color of the yellow of the Cha-Cha right now. The Calaburst yellow does have a little bit of, it kind of fades a little bit on the outside in a similar way that the Saffron Finch, Super Tunia Saffron Finch petunia does, and the Bee's Knees petunia. It's very attractive, but I think I want to go solid, since this has a little bit of kind of shading in it. So I think this is what I'm going to do, folks. I have decided. So sorry, Petcoa, I'm going to save you for another combination. So let's see, I have these two. So really the combination is very straightforward. I put this in the center, my Itzies go right here, and they recommend a 14-inch pot. And I liked in the picture the urn that they had used. I thought that was kind of an attractive way, and I know these plants are going to drape over it. And this is just a basic plastic urn that we had kind of laying around, and I thought, you know what, this will work for when I need to. And I know that the plants are going to cover up most of this. I did have to make sure and drill a drainage hole in it, though, because this one did not have drainage, and that would have been a problem down the road. Especially these calibrachoas would be hating me if I didn't give them proper drainage. So I'm going to just pot these up real quick. And again, this Beth's Blue, love it. They used to have Patty's Pink, and I don't think they carry it anymore, and I miss that, because that was another one that just did its job. Maybe it's still out there somewhere. I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for it, because I'd love to have it back. And then also, I have been enjoying going on that Proven Winners recipe search. It's been kind of fun for me to hunt through those and look at plants. And just so you know, and somebody had asked me this, I don't have an affiliation with Proven Winners. They don't send me free plants. They don't pay me any money. There's nothing like that going on. We are a Proven Winners certified retailer, which means our staff take a little bit extra training on some of the Proven Winners plants. But the goal of that program is kind of a marketing and educational program put on by Proven Winners. So, and the reason I tell you that is because you can go on their website and find out what other retailers have Proven Winners certified staff. And that can come in pretty handy in the sense that if they're certified, these are going to be people who are going to know the difference, say, of how a Super Tunia performs versus like a bedding petunia and that type of thing. Sometimes when you go to some places that, like big box stores, there's going to be staff that have no idea that there's differences in those kind of plants. So, I think it's a good way, to find maybe a retailer near you who you can talk to and ask those questions to, and maybe they can explain too anything, like if you've been having specific problems with plants in your area, they may know of some conditions that are specific to your area that you need to watch out for. For example, sometimes people have like really clay soil, and so they don't get good drainage, and that explains some things. Other places, it's more a case of like we have high pH in our water, and that can cause some problems. And even things like calibrachoas tend not to like to be in the ground. They like to be in pots because they like consistent pH. So it's, a lot of times people will put calibrachoas in the ground and they might not have good luck with them. It's usually because of the pH of their water and their soil. So I've got these tucked in. I'm going to fill them in afterwards, but I think this is going to be beautiful. I think these pastel colors are just nice and bright. Again, I like having this Beth's Blue in the middle because I know it just kind of does its thing. It just stays in a nice little mound. It stays in its lane, doesn't try to fight the other ones. And I know that these other plants should just trail over the edge rather than try to fight their way in. I will have to keep an eye though on especially that Itsy, and sometimes the Cha-Chas can be a little bully in certain combinations, but I think they're going to be fine because this is a really well-established Beth's Blue, and it's dense enough that plants don't usually like to fight in there. So this one, looking forward to it. Now the next one, jump over to that one. So let me move a couple things. So the next plant I wanted to work with was this variegated Plectranthus. Proven Winners calls it a Swedish ivy. And so I just went on their website, even though this isn't the Proven Winners version, it's very, very similar, if not the same plant. And I thought, let's see what they put it with, because this is a plant that I tried for the first time last year, and it is pretty impressive. It can be a little vigorous, a little overpowering if you're not careful. So you do have to be careful. Like, don't put 3 of these in a container because it will just take over. But you can see it's already getting these long arms, and the long arms just keep going. And I was amazed because I think some of the arms got probably 5 or 6 feet long last year, maybe even longer. Definitely hit the pot was at least 30 inches off the ground, went over the edge down and started going out. So it was incredible how well this did. So we do want to be careful with this one. So I found a nice recipe with a geranium and some lobelia that I really thought was beautiful. So we want to only use one of these in there because we do not want everybody fighting, or this guy fighting everybody. So I'm just going to put them, they call for a 12-inch basket, I think. I'm going to put it in a 14. It's definitely going, the plants that I have, I know are going to be fine for a 14-inch plant. So because this is our vigorous one, they only put one in and we put it right in the center. And I like the fact that it's already just kind of spreading out, so it's heading in the right direction. Now, most of our geraniums, we've plucked the leaves off because we're within 2 weeks of opening. So what we do is go through and we pluck all the flowers and buds off of all of our geraniums about 2 weeks before. We give them a good watering with fertilizer, and then we just ignore them. And that usually gets them kind of a little startled. They start producing tons of buds and flowers. And the only thing we will do is if they get really, really dry, like dry for 2 days kind of thing, will we give them more water. And for some reason, geraniums and begonias are a little bit like that too. If you kind of starve them of water, they tend to start producing their buds. They get kind of in panic mode, like, oh, I have to reproduce, or I have to produce flowers right now. And it does really work. And we do it right before opening so that we have lots of geraniums blooming at that time. So it's our little trick, or our little thing that we do. And it's worked for us anyway. So one thing about when you're picking your geraniums, if you're picking red, there's a lot of variation in reds, and there's a lot of reds available. If you are someone who likes that dark, velvety Valentine type red, then always look for a dark red. Sometimes red will get the job done. Sometimes burgundy would be another one that I see sometimes is a nice dark color. But if you're someone who likes more of that brighter, more orangey red kind of colors, look a little bit more towards maybe the scarlets. Those tend to be a lot in that orange tone, and people definitely have their preference when it comes to geraniums and orangey reds versus the bluey reds, I guess we'd call them. And I'm putting it with some lobelia. This is the Hot Plus Aqua, and I don't have any individual plants, but I do have some in this one here, and it's just starting to bloom. And I love the Hot Plus because the flowers are really big on it. And you can see how the lobelia is starting to grow. And as it gets a little bigger, it's gonna grow out, and then it'll start to trail and it'll start covering the pot. This isn't a super vigorous variety. I think the Proven Winners variety is a little more vigorous, and theirs is beautiful as well. Both the Hot Plus and I think it's the Laguna is the Proven Winners variety, and also the Techno varieties. Those are really good for more heat tolerant lobelia, because some of the other varieties of lobelia do peter out when it starts getting hot. So people have had bad experiences with lobelia, so definitely check heat tolerance on that. And I just want to point out this geranium here. This is, I better double check before I say it. This is the Fantasia Apple Blossom, and this is such a beautiful pale pink color. And we've had a hard time finding the light pink geraniums, and boy, this Fantasia one, I mean, if people like that powdery cotton candy pink, this is a great one. Just wanted to point that out. And I have in here, this is the Calliope dark red geranium. So that gives you an idea of what the dark red looks like. And that one's planted with an itsy white petunia. And you can see we've replaced Bacopa in this, because we used to do a lot of Bacopa and geranium baskets, but Bacopa can be a little finicky. If you're not good about watering, sometimes the Bacopa just, like if it gets thirsty, it just says, I'm just dumping all my leaves or all my flowers right now, and you're gonna have to wait 2 weeks before you see flowers again. The only thing is that the Bacopa could handle a little more shade than what we'd see in the with the Itsy. The Itsy's gonna like full sun. It can handle part sun, but it does best with more sun. So that's something to keep in mind. Wait, these things are resisting getting out, and I can see the roots are close to the end. Again, I don't break up my roots. These are, still really healthy. There's no reason for me to break them up. If they were a little more root bound, I would really work them a little bit more. But otherwise, I think these are good. I will add a little more soil. We do put some rice hulls along the top. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? So this one here, I think, is pretty much a sun to part sun. This one actually could go down to part shade. You could push either one of the, or any of these plants into a part shade. They do well. You might see that your geraniums maybe are a little more sluggish, and if that's the case, you want to give them a little more sun, but we usually can handle or have geraniums in part shade and they do just fine. I know the Plectranthus, I've seen it in full shade. Even though the tag doesn't say full shade, I've seen it and it's looked great. And the Lobelia can go down to that part shade very, very easily. So 2 more down. I am just like a planting machine here. I just love being able to kind of find these recipes and share some of my favorite plants with you, because that's the other thing. I know what it's like when you're going out and you're seeing like a billion different plants and you're like, I have no idea what's going to work. It's nice to at least have a list of some ones that you might be on the lookout for. Now, you might not always find them, but when you see it, you can start, going like, okay, that's one I want to remember, or that's one that I saw in that video. I'm going to go with it. So hopefully some of these plants might work as a little bit of inspiration for you. So I will see you guys on the next video. I will be posting updates later on in the season. Expect at some point in June, second half of June, to see updates on all of these planters that I've been putting together.